Hey guys, welcome back to the show. If you're new, please subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Now, what I'm doing in this episode and actually a series of episodes to come is talking about anchors. All right, how to build an anchor, parts of an anchor, and several different anchors that you can build. Let me start off by saying I'm not a licensed guide or trained in any way. So make sure you take this information for what it is. However, there is a long tradition of learning from others in climbing culture and history. And so, this is what I do. Other people may do other things, but I think you'll probably find it of value. Especially if you are interested in getting into trad climbing, multi-pitch climbing. And if you are, there are a couple of other resources that I'd like to tell you about. First of all is this book, which is Trad Climbing Basics. It is put out by VDiff. They also have their website, vdiffclimbing.com. Which has, I believe, all of the information that's in this book, as well as tons of other information freely available. It's a great resource to learn from. And since we're talking about anchors, this is another good book, Climbing Anchors. It is by John Long and Bob Gaines. Has tons of information about placing components, gear, and several different anchors, how to evaluate them, as well as some interesting stuff on test results from where they did testing of anchors. So, in the next several episodes, you're going to learn 6 different anchors, I think. In this episode, I'm going to focus on the anatomy of an anchor, how to evaluate anchors, and how to grade the quality of the anchor components. The anchors that I'll be going through in the next several episodes, I'm going to cover the quad, the sliding X, cordelet anchor. I want to do the swamp anchor, how to tie an anchor using just the rope, and then also a girth hitch anchor. So tons to come. Let's get started with the parts of an anchor. Okay, so to show you different parts of an anchor, I have this example set up. We're going to start with the main part of your anchor, which is the master point. The master point is where you're going to clip in, and it is tied with a master point knot. Now, a lot of people use different knots here. This is just an overhand. You use figure 8, you can use a figure of 9. There are some other knots as well. You choose from those, depending on the scenario that you're in. Usually I use the 3 knots that I mentioned, and I'll choose between them based on how I need to adjust the height of my master point. So an overhand kind of gives me the most slack in here. Figure 8's in the middle, and figure 9 takes up additional rope, so it pulls it up even higher. So that's typically how I'll choose which knot I need. But all of them are sufficient for tying a master point, at least in this particular anchor. So this is the master point. This is the shelf. Now the shelf is a clip-in point in the anchor, which shares all of the same characteristics of the master point. Now I'll get into those characteristics in a few moments, but it clips through, in this case, clips through all of these legs here, and it has all the same characteristics of being equalized, redundant, etc. As the master point. So it's equally as strong, and you can use it for the same thing. So if you want to, for example, clip yourself into here so you can belay off the master point, just to organize what's going on while you're using the anchor, that is a completely reasonable and acceptable thing to do. The third key part of the anchor is what I've always referred to. I've heard it called cabinet or closet, and that is really up here. And so in this case it's a bolt, you could just clip to this point. Now what you're going to clip here is nothing that needs to be redundant or equalized or any of that. So things like backpack, if you're multi-pitch climbing with a pack, water bottle, shoes, whatever you need to get out of the way but organized and up, onto the anchor. So like I said, often if I'm doing big multi-pitch stuff, I'll climb with a small pack, and at the belay station you take that pack off, hang it up here, dig around in there, get your water bottle out, get your food out, etc. Excellent place to clip it. That keeps it out of the way of where you're organizing your belayer, your climber, etc. So that is kind of the basic parts of an anchor. To evaluate an anchor, a lot of different acronyms are used. Earnest is one. SERENE is one, spelled multiple different ways. Several different ways to do it. The one that I remember is SERENE, spelled SERENE. Now that stands for simple, efficient, redundant, equalized, and non-extending. Okay, so let's take a look at this and see if it meets all of those criteria. Okay, is it simple? Well, it is simple. It's just a few different components hooked together with cordelette, and that's about it, and a master knot tied. Okay, is it efficient? Well, it's using, fairly minimal amount of gear. Other acronyms kind of think of this as timely. So is it quick to do? Yeah, it's pretty fast to tie this thing, right? Is it equalized? Meaning, when I pull in this direction, are all the components loaded equally, right? So that's what equalized means. And then is it non-extending? So if one of these fails, will it shock load the anchor from, an extension? And it will not, right? So remember I said that the shelf shares all those same characteristics with the master point. So what happens here is it is equalized. Both the shelf and the master point are equalized. They are all redundant because we are clipped through each of the different legs, so they're all redundant. That the efficiency and the simplicity is shared for the whole anchor, and it is non-extending. So if one of these legs fails, we don't shock load either the master point or the shelf. So that is kind of the acronym that we use to evaluate an anchor. We also should grade our anchors. Now, there are different systems out there. I showed you those two books. The Climbing Anchors book uses a 10-point system. The Trad Climbing Basics book uses a 6-point system. I prefer a 6-point system. I think it's simpler to remember, easier to use and evaluate. So this is how I do it. Other people may do it differently, but what we're looking for is our anchor to add up to 6 points minimum to be a good enough anchor. We grade each of the components that we use to build that anchor 1 to 3. Okay, a bolt or a large natural feature like a big tree or a horn that you're going to sling would get a 3. All right, it's not coming out. It's as solid as things get. So 2 of those, for example, a 2-bolt anchor equals 6, and we build a sufficient anchor out of that. If we don't have 2 3s, then what do we have? Okay, we can build, if we have a good gear placement, okay, a absolute bomber gear placement, that's a 2. So 3 excellent cams or a couple of solid cams and a nut that won't come out based on the direction of pull, each of those might be a 2, and so that adds up to 6. However, if we have a marginal gear placement, that gets a 1. Okay, so let's say we have 2 bomber cams and one kind of nut that, isn't great in a certain direction of pull, so that nut may only be a 1. That isn't going to add up to 6, and we don't have a, good enough anchor. Maybe that means we add another nut, and create an oppositional placement between those two nuts to get that up to the 2 in total, and then plus the other 2 cams gets us to a 6. So we're looking to add all those components up so that they get to 6. Maybe part of the crack is flaring, but we have to use it, and they're just kind of okay placements. Well, we're going to place more gear, right, in order to make the anchor add up to 6 and be safe enough for use. So that's how we grade an anchor. And in general, this means 3 components well placed is what we're going to build for a gear anchor, maybe 4 depending on the situation. Sometimes more, but typically it's 3 or 4 good pieces, or a 2-bolt anchor. So that's kind of what you're going to see most often. Again, like I said, trees, horns, kind of depends on where you're climbing and what you're going to see. But if we make sure that it adds up to 6, we should be good to go. That's pretty much it for this episode. In the next episodes, like I said, I'm going to start talking about specific anchors, show you how to tie those, talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of each, and when you might use them. All right, take it easy and check out the future episodes. Thanks, guys.